You ever stop to think about, the sheer scale of moving stuff around the planet? From your morning coffee beans to the latest gadget, it's this intricate dance of ships, planes, and trucks.
It really is.
And right now, India is right at the center of some really surprising shifts in how that whole system works.
That's fascinating, and you're absolutely right. We're at a real turning point in global logistics, and India's influence is definitely growing fast.
Yeah.
So today we're taking a deep dive into the current state and, well, what the future holds for freight forwarding in India. Our guide for this is a pretty comprehensive report called Beyond Borders, The Transformation of India's Freight Forwarding Ecosystem. It's by Amicus Growth Advisors, just out this month, May 2025.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit. Now, if you're thinking this is only for, industry insiders, think again. If you're following India's ambitious goal of hitting a massive USD 1 trillion in exports.
Huge goal.
Huge. And we're talking about much more than just software here. Then understanding how those goods actually get from point A to point B is absolutely key.
Precisely. It's fundamental. And to help us cut through the complexities of this evolving landscape and really pinpoint what matters most, we have our expert with us today. They've spent some serious time with this report, identifying the crucial trends and, the challenges that lie ahead.
So our mission today is pretty simple. We want to extract the most valuable insights from this report, give you a clear picture of what's shaping India's freight forwarding future without getting bogged down in, endless data. Ready to get started?
Absolutely. Let's jump right in. Maybe start with the market overview, size and growth.
Good idea. All right, so the report kicks off by telling us that India's freight forwarding market was valued at USD 10.1 billion in FY24.
Right.
And get this, they're forecasting it to reach a whopping USD 17 billion by FY29. That's a pretty significant 10.9% compound annual growth rate.
It really is. That's strong growth.
So what's driving this kind of rapid expansion?
Well, there are several really powerful forces at play here. First off, you've got India's merchandise trade just experiencing a major upswing. It grew from, USD 844 billion in FY19 to USD 11,115 billion in FY24.
Wow.
Yeah. So more trade naturally translates directly into greater demand for freight services. You got to move those good.
Makes total sense. More products being bought and sold means more products needing transport. What else is fueling this growth?
The e-commerce boom is another huge contributor. I mean, think about it. It was valued at USD 323 billion in FY24.
Already massive.
And it's projected to grow at an incredible 18% annually. They expect it to hit USD 325 billion by FY30.
Whoa.
All those online purchases have to be delivered.
Exactly. The endless scrolling leading to a massive surge in shipments. And I also recall hearing about India's strong push in manufacturing.
That's right. That's another piece. The government has set this ambitious target to increase manufacturing share of GDP to 25% by FY24.
25%?
Yeah. So this growth in domestic production directly leads to increased freight and, overall supply chain activity within the country.
So more factories churning out more goods that then need to be moved around.
Yep.
Got it. What about the infrastructure, the roads, ports, all that? Is it keeping up?
Well, there are substantial investments being made. Roads, ports, various forms of combined multimodal transportation infrastructure. These improvements are making the entire network more efficient, allowing for smoother and faster movement of freight.
Okay.
And then you have government policies like the National Logistics Policy and those Production-Linked Incentive or PLI schemes. They're specifically designed to strengthen the sector's capabilities and make it more cost competitive.
And in today's world, you can't really talk about logistics without mentioning technology.
Absolutely not. The increasing adoption of digital tools, AI, even blockchain technologies, it's all enhancing transparency, speed, and overall efficiency across supply chains. Big impact there.
Okay, so it sounds like a perfect storm, really. A combination of factors all pointing towards significant growth. The report also breaks down the market into different segments, right? Ocean, air.
Yes, exactly. So ocean freight, which is still, the dominant way international trade happens, that's projected to grow from USD 4.5 billion back in FY19 to USD 13.9 billion by FY29. That's a strong 11.9% annual growth rate.
That's the biggest chunk then.
By far. Air freight, while a smaller part of the overall market value-wise, is obviously still very important for certain goods. It's expected to increase from USD 1.6 billion to USD 2.8 billion over that same period. That's about 6.6% annual growth.
Okay.
And finally, customs services, essential for any cross-border trade, right? They're anticipated to grow from USD 0.1 billion to USD 0.3 billion with an annual growth rate of about 10.3%.
So we're seeing pretty solid growth across all these key areas, but especially, wow, in ocean freight. Let's maybe dive a bit deeper into that. Geographically, where is most of India's ocean freight actually heading?
Okay, yeah. The Americas continue to be the top destination. They accounted for 33.6% in FY24, which is actually a slight increase from 32.9% back in FY19. So pretty stable, but growing.
Right.
The Asia-Pacific region, APAC, has remained relatively steady too, around 24%. Interestingly, Europe's share has grown a bit from 19.6% to 20.1%.
Okay, so Europe's becoming slightly more significant. Are there any notable shifts in terms of specific countries or regions India is trading with most by sea?
Yeah, there's one quite interesting shift. The proportion of ocean freight going to China and North Asia has actually decreased. It went from 17.7% down to 15%.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the Middle East and Africa have seen an increase, rising from 5.6% up to 6.7%. So it suggests maybe some diversification happening in India's ocean trade partners.
Makes sense. And within India itself, which port hubs are the real key players handling all this maritime traffic?
Gujarat is the clear leader there, managed a massive 554 million metric tons of cargo in FY23.
554 million?
Huge numbers. Maharashtra is next at 219 MMT. Then you've got Andhra Pradesh and Orissa, both handling around 175 MMT each, and Tamil Nadu at about 140 MMT. So those states really form the core of India's ocean trade infrastructure.
Okay. What about the actual volumes, like the number of containers being moved, imports and exports? Are those numbers growing?
They are. So India's ocean import volumes, measured in TEUs, that's the standard 20-foot equivalent unit for containers, they peaked at 7.6 million back in FY20. There was a bit of a dip, probably pandemic-related, but they bounced back strongly to 8.0 million in FY23.
Right.
And they're projected to reach 8.3 million in FY24, and get this, 10.1 million by FY29.
Wow, okay. And exports?
Exports have shown really consistent growth, from 5.8 million TEUs in FY19 up to 7.6 million in FY23. That's a healthy 7% annual growth. Projections indicate 8.1 million in FY24 and hitting 10.8 million by FY29.
That's solid, steady growth for exports. Now, I know the freight forwarding market itself can be quite fragmented, right? Lots of different companies involved.
Absolutely. The ocean freight market is indeed highly fragmented. The report points out that even the top 50 global players only handle about 35% of the total freight volume.
Only 35%.
Yeah, and that holds true for the Indian market as well. It really indicates a large number of smaller operators are active in the space.
So lots and lots of different players in the game. What about the increasing use of containers in India? That trend's been going on for a while, hasn't it?
Oh yes, containerization has seen significant growth in India, about an 8.1% annual rate from FY17 to FY24. What's particularly interesting, though, is the growing role of the non-major ports.
The smaller ones.
Exactly. Their share of container traffic has jumped quite dramatically, actually, from just under 29% in FY16 to over 42% in FY24.
Wow. Why is that?
Well, it's often driven by the efficiency of privately operated terminals at these smaller ports. It suggests a sort of decentralization of port activity, moving beyond just the traditional major hubs.
And I've heard about something called direct port delivery, DPD. Does that play into this efficiency push?
Definitely. DPD is a key initiative that greatly improves efficiency. Think of it like this. Instead of your goods going to a central warehouse after arriving at the port, getting sorted, then shipped again, DPD allows them to move almost directly from the ship to their next destination.
Ah.
It cuts out a significant middle step, saving both time and money. Big efficiency gain.
So less bureaucracy, faster movement. Makes sense. The report also touches on the total amount of cargo handled by Indian ports overall, right? Not just containers.
Yes. In FY23, Indian ports handled an impressive 1.4 billion metric tons of cargo. That really highlights their crucial role, managing something like 70% of India's trade value and over 95% by volume.
95% by volume.
Yeah. Pretty much everything heavy goes by sea. It's also worth noting that the capacity at the major ports increased substantially by 70% between FY15 and FY20, shows significant investment to handle these growing volumes.
Which specific ports are leading the way in terms of just sheer volume of cargo handled?
Dandale Port, which you might still know as Canla Port, that was the top performer in FY23, handled over 137 million metric tons.
Okay. And we've seen pretty significant improvements in how quickly ships can get in and out of these ports, haven't we? The turnaround time.
Absolutely. That's a huge story. The average turnaround time for ships at major ports has dramatically improved. It used to be, back in FY91, a relatively slow 8.1 days.
Wow, over a week.
Yeah. Now, in FY23, it's down to a much more efficient 2.15 days.
That's incredible.
It really is. This huge reduction reflects improvements in infrastructure, better management practices, technology adoption. It leads to faster processing, lower costs for shipping companies, and just makes India more competitive globally.
That's a massive leap in efficiency.
Yeah.
Now, just quickly, what kind of goods are we primarily talking about in these containers? What's India exporting and importing most?
Okay, looking at exports, based on CY21 data, steel products led the way. About 27.3 million metric tons. Key destinations were places like China, Vietnam, Nepal, the UAE, and Italy. Mineral exports like pig iron also saw significant volumes.
Right. And imports.
For imports, again in CY21, chemicals topped the list at 22.4 million metric tons, mainly coming from China, the USA, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, Malaysia. Food products followed at 14.6 million metric tons, largely sourced from places like Indonesia, Argentina, Malaysia, Ukraine, and Russia. These trends really reflect, India's growing industrial base and also evolving consumer needs.
Okay, so that gives us a really good picture of the ocean freight side. Very dynamic.
Yeah.
Let's switch gears now and look at air freight. Where is most of the air cargo traffic concentrated within India? Which cities?
Right. So in FY24, Delhi was the dominant hub by quite a margin, handled around 1.0 million metric tons of air cargo. Mumbai was next at 0.8 MMT.
Okay.
Then you have Bangalore and Chennai, seem 0.4 MMT and 0.3 MMT respectively. Kolkata was around 0.2 MMT. What's interesting, though, is that other cities collectively accounted for a significant 0.6 MMT.
Okay, so it's not just the big metros.
Exactly. It indicates that air cargo movement is expanding beyond just the major metropolitan areas.
And just like with ocean freight, are there sort of regional shifts happening in air freight trade partners as well?
Yes, there are some notable shifts there too. Back in FY19, the Middle East and Africa region accounted for the largest share, about 36.7% of India's air freight trade by value.
Right.
But by FY24, Europe had actually become the top partner, jumping up to 38.6%.
So Europe took the lead.
Yeah. Over that same period, the share of the Middle East and Africa and also the Asia-Pacific region declined somewhat. Trade with China and North Asia also saw a decrease, while the Americas experienced an increase, although, from a smaller initial base.
So Europe is becoming an increasingly important player in India's air cargo market. Interesting. How does India stack up globally in terms of air freight volumes? Are we a big player?
India is definitely a growing force in this sector. In 2024, it handled approximately 4 million metric tons of air freight. That's split between about 2 million international and 1.3 million domestic. That performance actually places India among the top 10 air cargo markets worldwide. Now, obviously, still behind the major players like the US, which handles around 33 MMT, and China at 13 MMT, but India's growth trajectory is significant.
Top 10 is pretty good. What about the actual volumes, like the weight of air imports and exports? How are those trending?
So Indian air imports did see a dip down to about 40.3 thousand tons in FY21. That was likely due to pandemic disruptions, right? But they've since recovered to 64.6 thousand tons in FY24. The projection out to FY29 is about 67.9 thousand tons, which represents a pretty modest 1.0% annual growth rate going forward.
Okay, only 1%. What about exports?
Similar story. Air exports also experienced a decline, but reached 97.0 thousand tons in FY24. The projection is for an increase to about 101.9 thousand tons by FY29, which again worked out to around a 1.0% annual growth rate.
So while the value of air freight trade with certain regions might be shifting quite a bit, the overall volume growth seems much more gradual compared to what we're seeing in ocean freight. That's interesting. The report also provides a longer-term perspective on India's air cargo market, doesn't it, looking back further?
Yes, it does. Looking at the period from 1995 all the way out to a projection for 2029, the report highlights a strong historical average annual growth of about 8.4% up to 2019. That was driven by, increasing global interconnectedness and demand.
Right.
The pandemic obviously slowed this growth considerably, but a significant rebound of 14.9% is projected for 2024.
14.9%. That's a big jump.
Huge rebound, yeah. After that, more moderate and sustained growth is expected in the subsequent years, supported by the continued expansion of international trade and ongoing investments in airport infrastructure.
That strong projected rebound for 2024 is certainly encouraging. Are there any typical, seasonal patterns in air cargo volumes in India, peaks and troughs during the year?
Absolutely. The report provides data looking at February 2024 through January 2025, and it reveals some pretty clear seasonal trends. March and October 2024 are anticipated to be the peak months.
Okay.
That's likely influenced by global supply chain demands, maybe pre-holiday rushes, retail activity, things like that. April and November 2024 are projected as the lower volume months.
Right.
Interestingly, the data also suggests a steady upward trend in cargo volumes beginning around August 2024. Understanding these seasonal highs and lows is really valuable for logistics companies, obviously, for planning their operations and allocating resources effectively.
Okay, so we've gotten a really good handle on the current state of play for freight forwarding in India, both ocean and air. Now let's turn our attention to that ambitious goal. India's USD 1 trillion export vision. The report emphasizes that achieving this requires growth beyond just the traditional IT services sector.
Precisely. That's a key message.
Right.
While IT services have been a massive strength for India, the focus now is really on unlocking the potential of other sectors, too. The growth of global capability centers, or GCCs, is a prime example.
Ah, yes, the GCCs.
These centers, which are expected to exceed 1,900 in number by 2025, are increasingly involved in higher value functions. We're talking banking, financial services, insurance, BFSI, engineering, R&D, sophisticated software, and internet services. It's moving well beyond basic IT support roles.
So we're seeing more complex, higher value work being done within India for global companies. That's significant. What about other types of non-IT service exports?
Yeah, we're witnessing significant growth there, too. Areas like business services recently saw an increase of 3% growth just in 2022.
43%.
Yeah. And transportation services are also showing signs of recovery as global freight rates start to stabilize a bit. These non-IT sectors are becoming increasingly important contributors to India's overall export economy.
And when we look at the bigger picture, the global context, how has global trade in goods been performing generally? Has it been growing steadily?
You know, it's actually demonstrated remarkable resilience. Global trade in goods has grown at a pretty consistent rate of about 5% annually over the past 20 years.
Even with all the disruptions?
Even when faced with significant disruptions like the 2008 financial crisis and, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic. This long-term growth trend provides a sort of stable foundation for India's export ambitions.
And India's own contribution to this global trade pie. How has that changed over time? Are we exporting more as a percentage?
There's been a noticeable improvement, definitely. India's share in global exports has increased from just 0.5% back in 1990.
0.5%.
Yeah, tiny, to a more significant 1.85% in 2023. Now, obviously, there's still considerable room for further growth, but this upward trend clearly shows India's increasing integration into global supply chains.
Okay, so moving in the right direction. What are the key strategies, then, that India needs to pursue to further boost its share of global trade and ultimately get closer to that trillion-dollar export goal?
Well, the report outlines several important strategies. Things like diversifying India's export basket, moving towards more high-value goods, improving the country's logistics and transportation infrastructure, which we've talked about, to reduce trade costs and time.
Crucial.
Absolutely. Actively pursuing more global trade agreements to open up new markets, investing in technological advancements and innovation to enhance competitiveness, increasing exports of environmentally sustainable products that's becoming huge globally,
Right.
and strengthening key manufacturing sectors like automobiles and electronics to boost production specifically for international markets.
So it's really a multi-pronged approach. Makes sense.
Great.
Now, the report includes some really valuable expert insights, starting with the discussion they had with the leadership of Pentagon Freight. What were some of the main points they highlighted?
Yeah, that was interesting. Pentagon Freight's leadership emphasized India's evolving role as a crucial link or node in global supply chains, especially within the Indo-Pacific and Middle East corridors. This is partly driven, they said, by the changing trade landscape following the whole U.S.-China tariff situation.
Okay.
They also stressed the importance of balancing growth with profitability, Their strategies for that include things like operational automation, targeted customer segmentation, not trying to be everything to everyone, and providing value-added services that go beyond just basic transportation.
Right, so it's about offering more than just moving boxes from A to B. It's about providing more comprehensive, smarter solutions. What helps them stand out in what must be a super competitive market?
Good question. They said they differentiate themselves by offering sector-specific expertise and tailored solutions. They leverage technology extensively for real-time visibility and efficient operations, and they maintain a strong focus on ensuring profitability for their customers through optimized logistics. When it comes to managing those wild fluctuations in ocean freight rates we talked about, they rely on long-term agreements with carriers and pricing mechanisms that are linked to industry benchmarks, what's called index-linked pricing, to try and provide greater stability for clients.
And with port congestion often being such a headache, what role do they see for digital tools in managing that?
They view real-time visibility tools as absolutely essential. For improving operational efficiency, sure, but also for mitigating risks for their clients. Being able to proactively manage shipments and respond quickly to any disruptions is key.
Makes sense.
Regarding air freight, they mentioned balancing the need for speed with cost-effectiveness. They do this by offering a tiered service model, different speeds, different prices to match customer needs, and by securing guaranteed space on key routes through what are called block space agreements, basically pre-booking capacity.
Okay. How do they tackle the potential bottlenecks of busy airports then? That must be a challenge.
Yeah, they mentioned a few things. Optimizing operations by securing advanced booking slots for terminal handling, exploring the use of secondary, less congested airports when it's feasible, implementing digital pre-processing of documentation to speed up customs clearance,
Right.
and also maintaining close collaboration with the ground handling companies to ensure efficient turnaround times on the tarmac.
What are some of the key technologies they believe will really transform the future of freight forwarding? What are they betting on?
They highlighted AI-driven systems, particularly for route optimization and demand forecasting, blockchain technology for secure and efficient document validation, getting rid of some of the paperwork headaches, and the development of autonomous platforms for orchestrating really complex supply chain operations.
Interesting. Revenue leakage money slipping through the cracks can be a significant issue in this industry, right?
Yeah.
What measures does Pentagon Freight have in place to combat that?
Yeah, they mentioned that. They've implemented tighter billing controls by linking invoicing directly to key shipment milestones, using automated systems to validate rates and ensure accuracy, generating automated reports to identify instances of potential underbilling or missed billing.
Okay.
And regular audits also play a crucial role, they said, in identifying and rectifying any discrepancies.
And finally, the perennial challenge of managing email overload.
That sounds familiar.
They said they're actively working to reduce their reliance on email for core operational activities, prioritizing the use of their internal systems for processing key tasks instead. Implementing structured workflows and task tracking tools helps improve efficiency and just reduces the information clutter associated with endless email chains.
Right. So a clear emphasis on embracing technology, driving efficiency, and providing greater value to their clients. That makes a lot of sense. Now, the report also delves into some of these significant challenges that India's freight sector is currently facing overall. What are some of the key pressure points identified? Well, one major challenge is the inherent volatility of maritime fuel prices, bunker fuel costs. These prices are influenced by such a complex mix of factors: global crude oil prices, supply and demand balance, geopolitical events, refinery capacity, environmental regulations like sulfur caps, even unforeseen natural disasters.
Yeah.
These fluctuations have a direct and often significant impact on shipping costs.
And it's not just the cost of fuel, is it?
Right.
What are some of the other factors that pile on to the overall cost of freight?
Oh, there's a whole raft of them. You've got seasonal surges in demand, like pre-holiday shipping rushes, limitations in shipping capacity due to factors like vessel availability, port congestion, even labor shortages, the physical characteristics of the cargo itself, size, weight, hazardous materials, refrigerated goods, etc. The distance and the specific route taken, including any surcharges for going through congested canals or high-risk areas, fluctuations in currency exchange rates, geopolitical events like the conflict in Ukraine we mentioned, or tensions elsewhere, government regulations and customs duties, the level of competition among different carriers on a particular route, and then all those various additional service fees, accessorial charges that can add up.
Wow, okay. A lot to juggle. Revenue leakage was something that Pentagon mentioned specifically. How significant of a problem is this across the broader freight forwarding industry, according to the report?
It seems to be a fairly substantial issue. There was a global survey referenced in the report suggesting that freight forwarders can potentially lose up to 15% of their revenue.
15%.
15% due to inefficiencies in their operations and billing processes. This can come from things like simple incorrect data entry, invoices just not being sent out, instances of uncollected payments or underbilling customers, a lack of coordination between different departments, sales promising one thing, ops billing another, inadequate training for staff, using outdated technology systems, and rate information like tariffs and contracts not being properly maintained or updated in the system.
15% is a huge potential hole in the bucket. What steps can businesses, the ones shipping the goods, take to better manage their freight costs, especially during periods of congestion or high prices?
Yeah, the report offers some practical advice. Working with reliable freight forwarders who have a proven track record of navigating congestion effectively experience matters. Utilizing digital freight platforms to get real-time quotes and visibility on shipping capacity. Considering more flexible shipping options, like maybe using ocean freight instead of air for goods that aren't super time sensitive if rates are spiking. Planning shipments well in advance, obviously, to avoid those last-minute rushes and premiums, and exploring the use of multimodal shipping solutions combining truck, rail, sea, air to bypass specific bottlenecks in the network.
That makes sense. Be flexible, plan ahead. Now, automation seems like a logical way to address many of these cost and efficiency challenges, but the report suggests that freight forwarders themselves are actually facing difficulties in implementing it successfully. Why is that? What are the main hurdles?
That's an interesting point they make. There are several key reasons identified. Many of the existing technology tools, the report argues, were primarily designed for providing visibility and tracking, the where is my shipment question, rather than focusing on improving the actual day-to-day operational efficiency for the people doing the work.
Oh, okay. Focus was wrong.
Kind of. Another significant hurdle is the prevalence of siloed systems within organizations. Different departments using different software that doesn't talk to each other effectively creates data gaps and manual workarounds.
Yeah, I can see that.
Furthermore, current automation often struggles to handle the sheer number of exceptions and unique situations that are just inherent in the freight forwarding process. Things go wrong, plans change. If the automation isn't flexible, staff won't use it. That leads to lower adoption rates by frontline staff who just don't find the tools truly helpful or adaptable in the real world.
Right.
And finally, the return on investment, the ROI for automation projects, isn't always clearly defined upfront or consistently measured afterwards.
Right.
So it's hard to justify the spend sometimes.
So the focus really needs to shift towards creating automation tools that actually make life easier, more efficient for the operators, the people on the ground doing the work. What needs to change in the overall approach to automation in this sector?
Exactly. The key shift needs to be from a system-centric approach, here's the tech, to one that prioritizes the needs and experiences of the operators and focuses squarely on delivering tangible business outcomes like reduced costs or faster processing times. Tools should be intuitive, designed around real-world workflows, not forcing people to adapt to the software's limitations. Different systems need to be integrated properly to share data seamlessly. APIs are key here. Automation needs to be capable of handling exceptions intelligently, maybe using AI, rather than just failing when something unexpected happens.
Right.
The experience of the users, the operators, should be a top design priority. And crucially, the actual impact of automation on efficiency, cost savings, error reduction, it needs to be rigorously tracked and measured to prove its value.
That makes a lot of sense. Operator-first design. The report also highlights the problem of the email bottleneck. I think many of us, in any industry really, can relate to being overwhelmed by our inboxes. How does this issue specifically impact efficiency in freight forwarding?
Oh, it's a big one. The heavy reliance on email for routine communication, for quotes, for updates, for documents. It creates several major inefficiencies. It leads to just a massive volume of unstructured inquiries that require manual sorting, prioritizing, and responses. There's often a lack of systematic tracking. Did someone answer that query? Who's handling it?
Yeah, things get lost.
Exactly. There's a dependence on individual employees' inboxes, which can create blind spots if someone's out of office, and it hinders visibility across teams. And it fosters a generally reactive work culture where staff spend way too much time just responding to emails rather than proactively managing shipments and anticipating problems.
And the business impact.
The negative business impacts are pretty clear. Reduced productivity of staff, longer turnaround times for simple tasks like getting a quote, and an increased risk of service failures or errors due to missed or delayed information buried in an email chain.
Ugh. So what are some strategic recommendations the report offers to help freight forwarders break free from this email bottleneck?
It suggests a few key things. Implementing centralized query management systems like dedicated ticketing or CRM systems to handle customer inquiries more efficiently and track them properly. Providing self-service portals for customers where they can access information, track their shipments, get standard quotes, download documents themselves without needing to email someone.
Right. Empower the customer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Integrating communication features directly into the core operational software platforms, so the conversation history is linked to the actual shipment record, and establishing standardized protocols and maybe even using chatbots or templates for handling common types of inquiries to reduce the need for individual email exchanges for routine stuff.
Okay, makes sense. Looking beyond these specific challenges like automation and email, what are some of the other broad factors that are putting pressure on the profit margins of freight forwarders in India right now?
Well, the list is quite extensive, unfortunately for them. It includes those operational inefficiencies and suboptimal route planning we talked about, often due to reliance on outdated systems or manual processes. The volatility of fuel prices is a constant pressure. Shortages of skilled labor truck drivers, warehouse staff, customs experts, and the rising costs of that workforce.
Yeah.
The complexities and costs of navigating regulatory compliance and potential customs delays that can eat into margins quickly. Intense price sensitivity and competition in the market, forcing margins down. Underutilization of assets, trucks sitting idle, warehouse space empty, increasing costs associated with investing in new technology and infrastructure.
Right. They cost money too.
Absolutely. The risks of cargo theft and the associated security costs, a lack of real-time data and visibility across the entire supply chain, leading to reactive problem solving instead of proactive management. And of course, the uncertainties introduced by geopolitical risks and fluctuations in currency exchange rates. It's a tough environment.
It really sounds like a challenging and complex environment to operate in successfully.
Wow. One issue that has been in the news quite a bit over the last few years is the shortage of shipping containers and the resulting spike in freight costs. What's India's strategy to address this vulnerability?
Yeah, that's a critical point. The report references a study by an organization called GTRI, the Global Trade Research Initiative, which highlights India's vulnerability here. It's due to a combination of factors: significant reliance on foreign shipping lines to carry its trade, a heavy dependence on importing empty containers, particularly from China.
We don't make enough of our own.
Exactly. India's domestic manufacturing capacity for shipping containers is currently quite low compared to global demand, and apparently the production costs are higher than in places like China. And another factor is that a large portion of India's container cargo is transshipped, meaning it goes via an intermediate port like Singapore or Colombo, which adds cost and dependency.
Okay, so what's the recommendation? To address this, the report recommends boosting domestic container production through significant investments and policy support, and also scaling up India's own domestic shipping industry to reduce its dependence on foreign carriers. The goal is to mitigate the risks associated with these global supply chain disruptions and dependencies, build more resilience domestically.
Okay, build more containers, build more ships. Makes sense. The geopolitical landscape is clearly casting a huge shadow over all of this. The report touches specifically on the trade tensions between the U.S. and China. What are the implications of that for freight forwarding, particularly for India?
Yeah, the escalation of tariffs, the report mentions, the U.S. imposing tariffs as high as 245% on certain goods imported from China, has led to significant disruptions in established global supply chains. Businesses are facing increased costs, naturally, which often get passed on to consumers eventually. But this situation is also prompting companies to actively look at diversifying their sourcing and manufacturing away from China. This is the whole China plus one strategy you hear about. And that could potentially benefit countries in Southeast Asia, Mexico, and significantly India as businesses seek alternative, more stable or cost-effective supply chain locations. So it's a challenge, but also potentially an opportunity for India.
Right, a potential silver lining there. And the ongoing conflict in Ukraine has also created massive disruptions, hasn't it? How has that impacted shipping?
Absolutely. Huge impact. The conflict led to the closure or severe restriction of critical shipping routes in the Black Sea, causing backlogs, delays, and rerouting for grain and other commodities. Freight costs saw sharp increases, particularly for oil tankers navigating riskier waters, but also for air freight due to longer flight paths required to avoid the affected airspace.
Yeah.
Major logistics companies like DHL and UPS suspended their services in the directly impacted regions early on. And there are ongoing significant concerns regarding the safety of ship crews and the overall management of risks associated with operating anywhere near the conflict zone. Insurance premiums went way up, too.
How has this conflict influenced the roller coaster of freight rates we've seen over the past few years?
The report sort of identifies three distinct phases in that cycle. The initial phase, running from 2021 into early 2022, saw a major escalation of rates. This was driven by the existing pandemic-related congestion and demand issues, which were then massively compounded by the outbreak of the conflict, things like suspension of China-Europe, rail freight, soaring oil prices, higher insurance.
Right. Perfect storm.
Exactly. Then the second phase, roughly mid-2022 through 2023, brought something of a market correction. Global demand moderated as economies slowed. Some of the earlier port congestion started to ease, companies worked through excess inventory, and shipping lines restructured services. So rates came down quite a bit. However, the third phase, starting in 2024 and likely continuing into early 2025, has seen renewed volatility. This is partly due to ongoing geopolitical tensions, but significantly driven by disruptions in alternative trade routes, particularly the attacks on shipping in the Red Sea region, forcing ships around Africa.
Right, the Suez Canal diversions.
Precisely. That adds significant time and cost, messes up vessel positioning, and leads to rate hikes and increased hedging by carriers. So volatility is back.
So, looking ahead specifically to 2025, what are the key factors that are contributing to this ongoing uncertainty in ocean freight rates? What should businesses be watching?
Well, several factors are creating this uncertainty. Continued geopolitical tensions and the potential for further tariffs. The report mentions potential new U.S. tariffs on various countries, ongoing global conflicts, especially the disruptions in the Red Sea, although conversely, any potential ceasefires or resolutions could lead to a fairly rapid decrease in prices if routes reopen. And then there are the underlying market dynamics. There's potentially a lot of new ship capacity coming online from orders placed during the boom years, which could depress rates if demand doesn't keep pace. But you also have increasing market concentration among the major shipping lines and the big global freight forwarders, giving them more pricing power. It's a complex mix.
So a lot of interconnected factors influencing costs and the predictability or lack thereof of shipping. Very tricky. The report then shifts back to the crucial role of technology and innovation in navigating this complex environment. What are some of the key technologies highlighted as transforming freight forwarding?
Yeah, there's a whole suite of technologies making a significant impact. Things like electronic data interchange, EDI, which allows for seamless electronic exchange of documents like invoices and shipping orders between partners, reduces paper, speeds things up.
Right.
The Internet of Things, IoT, using sensors for real-time tracking of location, temperature, humidity, shock monitoring the condition of goods in transit. Also used for predictive maintenance on vehicles or equipment. Inquiry management systems, IMS, we touched on that. Tools designed to efficiently handle and track customer inquiries. Warehouse management systems, WMS, software for optimizing operations within warehouses, storage, picking, packing, and often integrated with transportation management systems, TMS. Big data and analytics, obviously huge, using the vast amounts of data generated to provide actionable insights for optimizing supply chains, forecasting demand more accurately, improving routing. Artificial intelligence and machine learning, AML, which can automate complex decision-making, improve forecasting further, enable dynamic pricing based on real-time conditions, predict maintenance needs.
Lots of AI applications.
Definitely. Autonomous vehicles and drones, still emerging but have the potential to reduce labor costs and improve efficiency, particularly in controlled environments like ports or warehouses, and potentially for last-mile delivery in the future. And robotic process automation, RPA, using software bots to automate repetitive, rule-based tasks like data entry or processing simple documents, which reduces errors and lowers operational costs.
It really sounds like a comprehensive technological transformation is underway, touching almost every part of the process. Another increasingly important aspect in today's world is sustainability. How is that playing out in the freight forwarding field? Is it just talk or real action?
It seems to be becoming a major priority, moving beyond just talk. It's driven by growing environmental concerns from customers and regulators, yes, but also by potential cost savings through efficiency improvements and the increasing importance of a positive brand image. Companies see it as a competitive factor now.
Okay, what kind of strategies are we seeing?
Key strategies for green logistics include adopting circular supply chain practices, things like emphasizing reusable packaging, managing reverse logistics for returns or end-of-life products more effectively, implementing energy-efficient warehousing using solar power, smart LED lighting, efficient HVAC systems. The report even mentions green building certifications like LED becoming relevant for logistics facilities. And of course, pursuing carbon-neutral shipping. This involves optimized route planning to reduce mileage, using electric or hybrid vehicles where feasible, especially for shorter distances, participating in carbon offsetting programs for unavoidable emissions, and implementing programs to improve fuel efficiency for conventional trucks and ships.
So it sounds like it's not just about being environmentally responsible, which is important, but it's also increasingly about making smart and efficient business decisions that happen to be green.
Exactly. Often, efficiency and sustainability go hand in hand. Reducing fuel consumption saves money and cuts emissions. Optimizing routes does the same.
In such a competitive market with all these pressures and opportunities, how can a freight forwarding business truly differentiate itself? What does the report suggest?
Yeah, differentiation is key to survival and growth. The report suggests several strategies. One is niche specialization, focusing on specific industries like pharmaceuticals or perishables or particular geographic trade lanes where you can build deep expertise. Technology integration is another, deeply embedding digital tools into all aspects of operations and customer interaction, offering superior visibility or efficiency. Adopting a truly customer-centric approach, providing highly personalized service, building strong relationships, really understanding and solving client problems.
Okay.
Focusing relentlessly on operational efficiency and cost optimization to be able to offer competitive pricing without sacrificing service quality. Building strong partnerships and networks across the logistics ecosystem with carriers, customs brokers, warehouse providers. Prioritizing sustainability initiatives and corporate social responsibility, CSR. This is becoming a differentiator for attracting certain clients. And finally, offering flexibility and scalability in their service offerings to meet diverse and changing customer needs. You can't be too rigid.
That makes sense. Be specialized, be tech savvy, be customer focused, be efficient, be connected, be green, and be flexible. Quite a list. The report also highlights some of the new age logistics platforms that are emerging and shaking things up. Let's start with one based in India, Kogoport. What can you tell us about them?
Right. Kogoport, founded in Mumbai back in 2016, is essentially an online international freight exchange. They provide a technology-driven platform aiming to streamline freight operations for both exporters and importers. Their core services revolve around facilitating price discovery, helping businesses find competitive rates for international shipping, and enabling users to book freight services directly on the platform by aggregating offers from a wide range of ocean and air carriers. It's very much a digital-first marketplace approach.
Okay, so like a Kayak or Expedia, but for international freight. Got it. What about Flexport? They're a big global name that's also making a significant impact.
Yes, Flexport, headquartered in San Francisco and established in 2013, is another major transformative player. They position themselves as a digital-first freight forwarder, but maybe a bit broader than just a marketplace. They offer a comprehensive suite of solutions for multimodal shipments covering ocean, air, road freight, customs, insurance, even financing sometimes, all managed through their own proprietary software platform.
So they're both a forwarder and a tech company.
Exactly. Their business model is focused on becoming a full-stack logistics technology platform. The goal is to digitize pretty much every aspect of the supply chain to achieve greater efficiency, transparency, and control for their clients.
What are some of the key things that make Flexport stand out in the market, according to the report? What are the differentiators?
Their key differentiators include a very strong emphasis on digital transformation, using their cloud-based technology tools as the core offering. A unified platform that aims to integrate the entire supply chain process onto a single interface, booking, tracking, communication, documentation, analytics.
Okay.
A relentless focus on providing a user-friendly and customer-centric experience, with features like real-time tracking, proactive alerts, and easy communication tools. Leveraging advanced supply chain capabilities, often incorporating machine learning for things like forecasting or route optimization. Building a robust network of partners, carriers, warehouses, truckers with seamless API integrations. Those are the digital connections that allow different software systems systems to talk to each other automatically.
Right.
And also providing various value-added or ancillary services beyond just freight transportation, like customs brokerage, cargo insurance, trade finance, and supply chain consulting. Trying to be a one-stop shop, really.
Okay. So both Cogoport and Flexport are leveraging technology in really interesting, though slightly different ways to challenge the traditional freight forwarding model. Wow, we've covered a tremendous amount of ground in this deep dive into the Beyond Borders report. To try and bring it all together, what are the key takeaways that you'd want our listeners to really keep in mind from all this?
Yeah, it's a lot. I think the report really underscores the significant potential for continued growth within India's freight forwarding market. It's clearly driven by strong economic and trade fundamentals. We've explored the evolving dynamics within both the ocean and air freight sectors, the shifts in trade routes, the port efficiencies, the capacity issues.
Right.
We've seen the absolutely crucial role that technology and increasingly sustainability are playing in shaping the future of the industry. They're not optional anymore. And of course, we can't ignore the substantial impact that global geopolitical events are having and will likely continue to have on supply chains, costs, and overall uncertainty.
And ultimately, it all circles back to India's increasingly strategic position in global trade, doesn't it? And the absolutely essential role that a robust, efficient, and modern freight forwarding sector plays in achieving those ambitious national goals, like hitting USD 1 trillion in exports.
Exactly. It's the circulatory system for the trade economy. And, when you consider the rapid pace of change we've discussed, the interplay of technology, geopolitics, sustainability demands, market shifts, it really prompts a final question maybe for you to think about. What will be the single most disruptive force reshaping global logistics over the next decade? Will it be AI, geopolitics, decarbonization, something else entirely? And maybe more importantly, how can businesses best prepare for whatever that disruption might be, starting right now?
That is definitely food for thought. A lot to consider there. Absolutely fascinating stuff. Thanks so much for walking us through all that and joining us for this deep dive today.
My pleasure. It was great to discuss it.
Optional. If you're interested in exploring these topics further, you can certainly find more information on the trends and specific reports we've discussed today online.